I'm very honored today to host Dr. Basem Naim, the head of the Council on International Relations Gaza and the former Minister of Health. First of all, let me welcome all the sisters and brothers who joined us from all over Asia, maybe from all over the world, from Australia, from India, from Malaysia, from Gaza, and we have also from India, Kashmir, Sister Saima, and many other parts of the world. This is actually a series of webinars. We will begin by Palestine and with Dr. Basem Naim, but our plans include talking about other countries, especially Asian countries, and maybe also Arab countries, especially those with unstable condition. Today, we'll talk about 30 minutes, and after the 30 minutes, we'll open the floor for discussion for another 30 minutes. If there are more questions and comments, we'll open it for another 30 minutes. Basically, anybody who would like to ask or to comment should not exceed 2 minutes to leave time for other participants as well. Thank you very much. Dr. Basem may begin, please.
شكرا جزيلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation for all participants from different Asian countries and other countries, and my great thanks for Brother Abu Salam and his institution to organize this webinar, starting talking about Palestine, and this is not something strange to start with Palestine, as long as the Palestinian cause was and still the central issue of all Arabs and Muslims around the world, and we have to keep it like this. Finally, before starting talking, I want to apologize if something in English will not be correctly said or accurately said. You can freely raise hand and ask again. It is a discussion between brothers and sisters, and feel free to ask again. Maybe I want to talk around maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Then after that, I leave the floor for further questions in depth and in detail. If it's okay, we can start.
يلا تفضل دكتور. Please begin.
Today we are talking about Palestine during Corona era. Palestine, like any other country around the world, was negatively impacted by the pandemic, by the Corona pandemic. And there was a real danger of this, the spread of this virus in the Palestinian territories. But we have here a very special thing in Palestine. We are talking about a small, tiny area ruled by three different political entities. We have the area occupied in 1948, which is controlled by the Zionist regime. And we have the West Bank, which is partially controlled by the Palestinian Authority. And we have the Gaza Strip, which is now for the last 14 years, we can say, is controlled by Hamas movement. These different entities, or the work between and the relationship between these different entities have been reflected on the deal with the Corona virus. For example, we have 3 different health systems with totally different resources, rules and the regulations, and this was reflected on the procedures and the measures taken by the rulers in the different areas, how to deal with the pandemic. And here we can surely say that the political impact was not away from the health plans. It was clearly reflected, the political differences, the conflict was clearly, and the Palestinian division was clearly also reflected on the procedures and rules and regulations and the plans. The virus started spread in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. I mean, the 1967 occupied area, beginning of March this year. It was the first case was diagnosed in March 2nd in Beit Lahem. And immediately, the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah started to launch harsh and hard and tough procedures or regulations to keep the situation under control. Maybe at the beginning it was seen as too tough, but I think it was the right thing has been done at that time because of the very complicated situation on the ground and the very limited resources also by the Palestinian Authority. I think they have taken a lesson from what happened in China and in Iran, and how the situation was bad because of relaxed response from the authority there, or the governments there at the beginning. I think the PA took a good lesson from this, and they have, as I said, started very tough and harsh at the beginning. Here we have to say that at that time, on March the 2nd, despite of a fully geographical separation between Gaza Strip and West Bank, and we can say nearly no contact between the two areas, except a few people who move from and to Gaza, from the West Bank and to Gaza, and vice versa. Gaza started at that time also to take very strong decisions, very tough procedures to keep Gaza away from this pandemic. Again, the people have seen this as a little bit tough, but I think because of our very weak and fragile situation on the ground, after 14 years of Israeli-imposed siege, it was the right decision. What are the main challenges were in front of the PA in Ramallah and the government here in Gaza? Starting with the PA in Ramallah, as many poor third world countries, the limited resources. We are talking about an occupied area controlled more or less by the Israelis, with very limited resources. The second and more important challenge for the PA was the weak control over the area in the West Bank. For those, for our brothers and sisters who don't know about some details on the ground, the West Bank is divided into politically into 3 areas, or based on the security into 3 areas: Area A, Area B, and Area C. Area A must, and between brackets, fully controlled by the PA in Ramallah, but this is not the absolute case. Area B is divided between a civil control by the PA and security control by the Israelis. Area C, which is composing around 60% of the West Bank, is fully controlled by the Israelis. We can say 20%, 20%, 60%. This is this fragile system on the ground and the weak control make it very complicated for the PA to work in the different areas with one system, one rule, and with the same regulations. Therefore, I think this was the biggest challenge. The third one is we have around 150,000 Palestinians who go on a daily basis into the occupied territories 48, I mean Israel between brackets, for work. And they are moving on a daily basis from occupied, from the West Bank into Israel and back. And at that time, Israel was an infected area. And we have around 100 or maybe more checkpoints or crossings between the West Bank and the Israeli and controlled territories. And this make it very, very difficult for any authority on the ground to control the situation. To find something to eat. You cannot ask them simply to stay home and don't go to work without subsidiaries. This was maybe the third and most extreme or difficult challenge for the PA. When it comes to Gaza, I said the first case and diagnosed was in March 20 this year, and it was 2 cases returning back through Rafah from Pakistan, from Dawa party. They were in a trip in Pakistan and returned back to Gaza. Gaza has no option to close the crossings in front of Palestinians who want to return back to their country. This was the beginning on March 20. As I said, Gaza started before diagnosing any case, around 2 weeks before, to take very tough and very harsh rules and regulations to keep the situation under control. The main problem was for Gaza at that time, I mean technical and operational problem was we have 2 crossings, one with Egypt, which is Rafah, and the other one with the Israeli controlled areas, what we call it Beit Hanun crossing or Erez crossing. Hundreds of Palestinians decided to return back. Some of them were in Egypt for treatment abroad or for study, or some of them were in the West Bank for visiting their relatives or any other cause. These people, from the beginning, it was taken the decision to take them for 21 days obligatory quarantine. At the beginning, they have decided, I mean, the authorities here decided to ask them for a voluntarily house quarantine, but they found that it was not safe, and some people are not committed to stay home for 21 days and not to 21. Therefore, 1 week or 10 days later, they have decided to take anyone returning back to Gaza to obligatory quarantine for 20. At the beginning, it was 14 days. Then it was prolonged for 21 days. And they have exerted huge efforts to give them the best conditions of living in these centers. What was the biggest challenges in front of the authorities here in Gaza? The first one is the siege. We are talking about an area which is for more than 14 years under Israeli inhuman and tough and tight siege at all levels. This siege have affected all aspects of life. We are talking about poverty rate around 85%, around 80 to 85% of Gazans depending on food aid from international bodies. We are talking about around 50% between youth, maybe it could reach 60%. I'm talking about before the era of Corona. Unemployment rates, we are talking about 95% of water is not suitable for drinking, is undrinkable. The sea is 95% is not suitable for swimming. Electricity is at the best, the best time we got it 8 hour on, 8 hour off, all over the Gaza Strip. Therefore, we are talking about very, very tough humanitarian situation here before the Corona. And if you add to this the pandemic, it means that you have to exert more pressure on the people on the ground. You have to ask them to stay home as much as they can. You have to ask small companies, small factories to stop working, which means increasing the poverty rate, increasing the unemployment rate, and so on and so on. We have to add social environment like Ramadan, beginning of summer, and so on and so on. Therefore, this was the biggest challenge, which is the situation under the Israeli occupation, under the Israeli siege in Gaza. This have affected all aspects of governmental work, but mainly the health sector was affected. And we are talking about a very fragile health sector. For example, nowadays we are talking about around 50% of essential drugs or of the essential drug list needed or have to be secured for the people in the Ministry of Health. The stock is zero. 62 to 65% of the laboratory needs, the stock is zero. Around 30 to 40% of disposables are not available. These are only examples. You are talking about health staff who are working now for years, sometimes without any salaries, sometimes with 30% or 40% of their salaries. They are not able to leave. They are not able to take any other decision. The other challenge was the Palestinian division, unfortunately. Immediately after the election in 2006 and the rejection of the results that Hamas won the election, the Palestinian division
lost the sound.
Dr. Basem, صوتك راح. Dr. Basem, we lost your voice.
maybe
It's good.
الآن كويس. Yes, now.
It's okay.
Since 2007, we can see we have two governments, one in Ramallah and the other one in Gaza, and all efforts inside Palestine and outside Palestine, in Egypt, in Doha, Qatar, in Istanbul, in Yemen, in Russia, and other countries to bring the parties together and to achieve unity and to end the division, unfortunately failed. And this has been reflected on the daily work, on the life of all Palestinians here in Gaza Strip. I am sad to say this in public, but I am talking to people who are interested and who are supporting the Palestinian cause and who are seeking or looking for the best for our people. For example, I can say until today, we got nearly nothing from the PA in Ramallah, from all the donations got from other countries. They have received 10 million from Kuwait, from Qatar, 5 million from Kuwait, donations from Norway, from Switzerland, from Turkey and other countries. You can say nearly zero we have received from the government there. All interventions from the people here, from the factions, from the international community also failed to persuade the Palestinian Authority to take seriously their responsibilities regarding our people here in Gaza. The third challenge was the financial resources. Because of the siege and because of the embargo and because of the international embargo on money transfer to Gaza, even if you have the plans and you have you cannot buy your needs from any source because you don't have the financial resources. And this was very, I can say, for example, we have made hundreds of PCR tests to we are constantly serious to diagnose the positive or negative cases for public anytime. We have a limited number of PCR tests. We have a limited number of PPE kits to protect the staff and to protect the people. We have, as I said, the laboratory needs, which is essential for examining and testing the cases in a proper scientific way. 60%, 62% of the needs are stocks. Very limited number of ventilators, very limited number of beds. This was one of the biggest challenges. The fourth challenge was the closed borders. The borders are totally controlled by the Israelis, and the only one with the Egyptians, which is Rafah, is also controlled by the Egyptians. We cannot decide to open or to close the border. Therefore, if we need of anyone decide to come or to send some aid to Gaza, we will have some problems with getting these donations in because of the closed and the complicated coordination with the Israeli authorities. Lastly, I have to say that the biggest challenge was the overcrowdedness of the area here. Gaza Strip is one of the most populated area on earth. You can imagine that some refugee camps, like beach camp, we have 1 square kilometer where around 100,000 people are living. You can imagine what does it mean if we have the pandemic corona pandemic between such a group of collection of people, I mean, overcrowdedness was one of the biggest challenges for the people. Anyway, to come to the more serious points, total cases in the West Bank and Jerusalem was 547 cases. 4 of them died. In Gaza, we have only 20 cases, thanks Allah. 14 of them recovered, and the other six are still under treatment. Alhamdulillah, most of those patients have either no symptoms or very simple symptoms like a little bit fever or something. But in general, the situation here is under control. Maybe this is the only positive thing of being besieged for 14 years, that the movement from Gaza and into Gaza is very, very limited. To compare, the area controlled by Israel, by the Zionist entity, we have 16,458 cases. 74 of them are very serious, and they have 248 death cases. Now, to shift to politics. What is the real danger at the Corona era for Palestine and Palestinians in general? Sure, to be threatened by Corona pandemic with this very complicated system or political situation and very limited resources, sure, this is a great threat, and it was taken seriously from the authorities either here in Gaza or there in Ramallah. But I have to say, and I say it really serious, that the occupation and the trial of the Zionist entity, the Israelis, to exploit this pandemic, Corona pandemic, and that the whole world today, from east to west, north to south, is very busy of how to face Corona, how to fight against the pandemic. This was taken seriously by the Israelis and exploited very strongly to pass their long term and long standing at the same time. It is not new. What we are seeing today is not new after Corona. It is a very long standing and long term and dreams of Israelis. They have, I think, a strategic opportunity now, based on their analysis. They have a strategic opportunity. The international community, the whole world, all countries are busy with their own problem with Corona and how to fight Corona. And at the same time, they have maybe for the strongest American administration supporting these Zionist dreams of having the whole Palestine under their control as a step on the way towards the great Israel, from Euphrates to Nile. When we say that the Israelis have exploited this situation, it is not an analysis or a dream or no. You can go back to the letter sent by 130 parliamentarian in UK to Boris Johnson about the Israeli plans to annex the rest of the West Bank. And they have said it clearly that Israel is exploiting or using the time of Corona to pass their plans. You can go back also to the UN press releases and decrees where they have said it different times that we are warning, they are warning Israel not to use this time to implement their plans on the ground. What is Israel now, between brackets, trying to implement on the ground. If you are following the situation inside here in the Zionist entity, you will be aware that they are now for more than 1.5 years, they don't have a government. And lastly, last 2 weeks, they were able to reach an agreement between the two biggest parties to have a unity emergency government. If you go into details, maybe you will find some differences between this party and the other party, right and left and middle and so on, center, when it comes to the Israeli issues. But when it comes to the Palestinian issue, you will not find right or left or center. They have, all of them, they have the same position. And even what so-called leftist parties, in the last 10 years, they have shifted extremely towards the right to survive and to continue present in the Knesset. What are the main, the headlines of these Israeli plans during the next time? These are the same plans of the century deal, what's so-called century deal, or Trump vision to peace and prosperity in the area. And by the way, many documents indicating that this plan was written by Zionists, by Israelis, by Zionists in the administrations in cooperation with the Israelis, or Israelis in cooperation with the Zionists in the administration, and read only by by Trump in the press conference. The first step is to annex the greatest part of the West Bank. Now they are talking about Area C, which is composing around 60% of the West Bank, including the Jordan Valley. This will be annexed and considered as part of the state of Israel by all practical and legal means. This is the first step, and they are talking about 1st of July to announce this annexation. It means that hundreds of thousands of Palestinians will be taken hostages into these areas under the full Israeli control. The other step is the fulfillment or the continuation of the Judaization of Jerusalem and the suffocation of the presence of the Palestinian presence in the city. They are using all means, arresting the people, expelling them out of the city, demolishing their houses, exerting on them huge pressures by imposing unbelievable taxes so that the life there will be impossible. And they are moving hardly in this way. The third danger and the third step is the elimination of the UNRWA at the beginning in Jerusalem, then the West Bank. UNRWA is the UN agency for Palestinian refugees, and they are taking care of around 5 million refugees in Gaza Strip, West Bank and Jerusalem, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. These are the 5 areas where UNRWA works. They have announced this last year and started to talk about kicking UNRWA from Jerusalem outside, and the refugees, which is around 250,000 Palestinians in the Great Jerusalem, either they will be ruled or controlled, or I don't know how can we express it, by the Palestinian Authority. I mean, they can get their services, health and education and social affairs, either by the Palestinian Authority or by the Israeli. They have said we can take over and we can be responsible for education, health, and social affairs of the refugees in Jerusalem. The next step will be the West Bank to kick UNRWA out. Here we have to see a little bit that this plan started years ago, and they found that UNRWA is representing a physical witness about regarding the refugee issue, and they know that the refugees, the Palestinian refugees, representing the core of the conflict. And it is a demographic threat for the Israelis and for the Zionist entity as a whole, that around 7 to 8 million refugees are calling for return back to their homeland. They have been expelled from it forcefully in 1948 or 1967. Therefore, they know they have to eliminate this threat as soon as possible by starting with the UNRWA. The American administration, I mean Trump, they have helped them greatly by cutting the financial support for UNRWA, which was representing 1/3 of their yearly budget, which is 1.2 to 1.4 billion dollar a year for the 5 areas. Last year, UNRWA was able to recruit the needed money by very active Commissioner General Crane Ball, but for this he was punished and kicked out from UNRWA, and now we have a new one. He's very maybe smart, but he's not active. Now UNRWA is talking about a huge financial crisis, and they say we cannot continue giving the services if this crisis continue, and maybe we cannot, at the beginning of the new school year in September, we cannot open our classrooms if this situation continue, and maybe we have to close some of our medical facilities if the needed money is not available. The third threat by the Israelis to the Palestinians during Corona is to convert the Palestinian Authority fully into a security agent for the occupation. It is not simple cooperation, but they are going to be a full security agent for the Israelis, and to eliminate any chance that the Palestinian Authority could be transferred into an independent, sovereign state in the occupied, in 1967 occupied areas. Unfortunately, this was the plan by the Israelis from the beginning, and if you read all the details of the negotiation between Palestinians and the Israelis, all the time this was the Israeli vision. But unfortunately also that our leadership, our official leadership, Mr. Mahmoud Abbas and his group, they were not, either they don't believe it or they believe it, but they don't want to work against it. Therefore, they continued this, at that time, 1993, they have started officially the negotiation in Oslo and continued it to 25 years now. It was futile and destructive of any Palestinian dream. Lastly, one of the main threats to the Palestinians during this era is to how to emphasize the division, the Palestinian division, and how to institutionalize it and to convert it into governments and bodies and institutions. ending my speech, I have here to say that one of the most serious dangers to the Palestinian cause at this time, it is what the so-called normalization of the relationship between different Arabic and Islamic countries and the Zionist entity. Despite the Arabic League in 2002, they have issued a plan or an initiative, what's so-called the Arabic Initiative, that Arabic countries, 22 countries, are ready to normalize their relationship with Israel if they are accepting a solution based on 67 borders and solving in a just way the issue of the refugees. Despite of this, Israel rejected the initiative and insisted on normalizing the relationship with the Israelis without solving the conflict and without abiding the rights of the Palestinian of an independent sovereign state or their legitimate and agreed and legitimate and guaranteed right by the international community to return to their homeland. Yes.
إذا سمحت لي أنت تجاوزت الوقت ب 12 دقيقة فإذا ممكن
I am ending.
conclude.
Therefore, yeah. I have to warn greatly to from this new wave of normalization of the relationship between Israel and different Arabic countries, Islamic countries, and some of our friends. We are talking about India and Brazil and other countries who were historically supporter of the Palestinian right. These are the main points I want to talk about today, and I thank again all participants for their precious time, and also for Brother Abu Salam, Brother Muhammad and his group to organize this webinar. Thank you very much, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just a quick summary of what Dr. Basem said. Basically, he talked about the condition under the Israeli siege and the main challenges, including the difficulties in getting medical staff in, and the unemployment among the youth. Also, the financial challenge, monetary embargo, made it difficult to buy the needs such as toolkits and other health needs. Also, the closed borders, which also made it difficult to get donations in. Another one is the overpopulation in Gaza Strip in particular, where sometimes 100,000 people are accommodated in 1 square kilometer. Other things Dr. Basem alluded to is that the Israeli occupation is taking advantage of the pandemic to annex the West Bank and the Jordan Valley, also closing the UNRWA, which is the main refugee agency helping the Palestinians, also trying to convert the Palestinian Authority in a full security agent. Finally, he talked about widening the gap between the Gaza and the West Bank authorities and trying to make this division permanent, taking advantage of this difficult situation. The last point, he talked about normalization with Arab and Muslim countries without even acknowledging the Palestinian rights. Let's have some questions. Please, you could intervene directly. Any question? Yeah, Dr. Peter, please, go ahead.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Basem for this presentation, and it's a privilege for me to be able to participate. Thank you, Dr. Makram, as well. Obviously, for those of us activists involved in the Palestinian cause outside, the question I'd like to ask following your lecture is what you would suggest we can most usefully do, not just under the pandemic, but more generally. In particular, you mentioned the division between the Palestinians in Gaza and in Ramallah. That's been a sensitive issue for activists. There's been some reluctance, I can say, here among Palestinians involved in the cause to address that when we're talking to our politicians. I wonder if on that issue you can indicate what you would recommend as advice, whether we as activists and advocates, in that regard specifically, I'd be very grateful for your guidance.
Thank you very much for your important and practical question. I think all brothers, sisters, and friends, supporters outside Palestine, they have a great role to do in supporting Palestinians. First of all, I have to say that Israel is depending hugely on the image of Israel in the international community. They are trying to reflect themselves as the democratic, most civilized state and country. But this is not the reality. If it is a reality, it's only between Jews. It is not with others living here. Therefore, the first duty is how to present the reality of this state, the criminality, the brutality, how they can keep 2 million people for more than 14 years besieged in the biggest open air prison. And this is by the way, biggest open air prison, and ghettos have been used by famous Jewish lecturers and figures around the world. The second thing is how can our friends around the world keep the Palestinian issue present on the table? The Israelis is trying all what they can to push this question, the Palestinian question, from the table, and for example, now in the Arabic area, they say the problem is not in the occupation. The problem is the conflict with Iran, for example. And therefore, we have to think of how can we together face Iran. You can go back to the Trump plan. No single word is talking about occupation or Palestinian as a political entity. The third point is the media. We have a great problem with the mainstream media. Maybe we have a little bit chance got through the social media, but even lastly, maybe you have heard that last week Facebook have closed many Palestinian accounts and pages, and only because you are talking about the reality. Therefore, how can we reach the mainstream media? How can we reach the simple citizen in the different countries? The fourth thing is how can we collect a grassroots support for the people on the ground? The people here, I have said 85% of Gazans are suffering of poverty or depending on international aid. 13,000 staff, health staff, are working now for years without any salaries. How can we lift the siege? How can we break down the siege? How can we concentrate on? Lastly, I have to say that our supporters outside have to take seriously the chance of legal work and to bring the Israelis accountable for their criminalities. Everywhere, in Australia and India and Belgium and everywhere, they are afraid, really seriously afraid of being accountable for their crimes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, let me have the liberty to ask you a question, Dr. Basem.
Yes.
Yeah, about the annexation, actually, I feel very worried about this important move that actually could undermine the idea of a Palestinian independent state. How do you propose facing this kind of move?
Thank you very much. This is also a practical question we have to face in the next few days and weeks, because as I said, they are talking about 1st of July. I have to say at the beginning that now we are living in a de facto apartheid state. A canton in Gaza and dozens of cantons and islands in the West Bank. If they annex the West Bank, it means we are living in a de facto, but also in a legal, an apartheid state. And at the international level, first we have to fight this racism and this kind of regimes, as we have done in South Africa and in different other areas. Second, starting from down upwards, I think Palestinians first, they have to end their division and not to give anyone a chance to use this division as an excuse for being reluctant or not to want to help Palestinians, because many Europeans or some countries say, okay, what can we do if the Palestinians themselves are divided and they are not willing to move? We have to end the division. We have to mobilize the people on the ground to protest by all means, mainly non-violent means, but also even if violent, but again, at the end, violent means if it is a resisting of the occupation and oppression, it is a guaranteed right by the international law. But I mean, if we can start or we can mobilize the people on the ground to resist this annexation, because the Israelis are not willing to pay any price for this move. Therefore, they have to pay the price for this, from their security, from their economy, from their political image, from all, like what we have done here in Gaza along the last 2 years, the Great March of Return. I think something like this have be launched in the West Bank. Thirdly, I think we have to go to international bodies. Okay, maybe by force they can impose their plans, but if we can go to international bodies, to the Security Council, to International Criminal Court, other ICC, or to The Hague, we have to keep fighting against the legitimacy of the presence of the Israelis in these areas. I think this is what we can do now. Finally, I think our friends all over the world, they have to exercise pressure on their governments not to recognize these steps and to fight against these steps. Because, for example, I hear the Europeans talking about illegitimacy of annexation. But at the same time, in the project Horizon 2020, we found that they have paid millions or billions of dollars to Israeli settlers and to the IDF companies in this biggest European research project, which is called Horizon 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Can I just make a comment?
Sorry?
Can I just make a comment? I don't have a question, but a comment.
Yeah, please. Saima, is it Saima?
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Naim, for updating us about Palestine. Like, I literally felt while you were talking about the situations in Palestine, I felt like that you were talking about Kashmir, because that's what we've been going through as well. Like for the places like Kashmir and Palestine, it's not just a normal lockdown as it's in other parts of the world. It's like lockdown within a lockdown. Like we have been under lockdown for years altogether. And like for places like Kashmir and Palestine, even the internet doesn't work. Like recently, back in Kashmir, in a hospital they were supposed to carry out like emergency operations, but they could not because the internet was not working. The phone lines were snapped, and they could not call their staff to carry out the operations. So yeah, so patients were left like that. So it's a really tough situations for the places that are in like conflict, that have been in conflict for like a couple of decades now. So yeah, for the rest of the world, it might be like normal pandemic, like living in quarantine and stuff. But for the places like Kashmir and Palestine, it's a really, really tough time because we don't have only a pandemic of virus, we have a pandemic of occupation as well. That has been there for years altogether. Like the occupations like Israel and India has literally like gone onto our nerves, and we don't know whether to fight coronavirus or to fight like the occupation. So yeah, thanks for telling your story. It makes us feel that there is somebody else as well out there in the world that goes through the same and that can identify with our pain as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
Yes.
I think Mutia was want to do a comment.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, Brother Moti.
Alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Basem for this discourse. My question is, how do you in Gaza see the announcement of the International Criminal Court regarding investigating the Israeli crimes against the Palestinians?
Thank you very much, Brother Mutia.
And you can answer them together.
Yes, yes, please, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for letting me in, and thank you for holding this meeting. And thank you, Dr. Basem, for your lecture. My question is about you're talking about the Palestinian division, and that there is some countries, especially the European countries, use it as an execution, as an excuse, to stop the supporting to Palestine, as there is no face to Palestine, no one to say I am Palestine and I can get that support and take it to everyone. So what is the practical steps that we can make to move forward to skip this problem?
Thank you very much. Regarding the first question about the ICC decision, I think it is very important to keep pressuring the Israelis in all fields, including the legal aspect represented by the ICC. But at the same time, we have to be aware not to exaggerate our expectations of such institutions. For example, we have from The Hague in Netherlands in 2004 a clear court resolution that the separation wall in the West Bank is illegal and is a violation of international law. It is against international law. Okay, but practically, how was this converted on the ground? Zero. At the end, these big institutions, they are caring of so complicated balances that the outcome is very, very tiny, very, you can. But it is very important to keep fighting in these fields and to keep pressuring the Israelis. At the end, the Israelis, they can by force impose their plans, but as long as they don't have the certificate of legitimacy from the Palestinians or Arabs or the international community, they will continue to be unstable they don't feel secure. They don't feel again. Therefore, I think it is very, very important, very crucial. And I know I am following this case very closely. I know how strong the pressure was exercised on Fatou Bensouda not to reach these results. Again, maybe practically it doesn't mean a lot, but it is very important and crucial. Regarding the second question, yes, division is disastrous, is harmful, is a catastrophe for the Palestinians. It has been used by many parties to get rid of their duties towards the Palestinians. Some Palestinians themselves, Arabs, Muslims, and friends around the world. And we should, and here we have to talk about 2 points. First, I don't accept from anyone who is believing on justice and who is believing on law and who is believing on human rights to use the Palestinian division as an excuse not to stand behind the Palestinians and not to support the Palestinian rights, because the Israeli plans started in 1948. It has nothing to do with the Palestinian division. Maybe the Palestinian division have make it easier for them, but it has nothing to do with the Palestinian division. And who, by the way, who is dividing the Palestinian and who is deepening the division? The Israelis. They are keeping the Gazans hostages in the Gaza Strip and preventing anyone from the West Bank to come to Gaza. Anyway, but at the same time, I have to say that we Palestinians, we have to continue doing all what we can, the maximum we can, to end the division and to reach unity and to have a unity government and a one united political representation in front of the whole world. I think Palestinians have in common much more and more than they have what can divide them. Believing in our cause, we are believing in, and at least all today believe in a state in 67 borders. I think we can do it if we have the will. Unfortunately, our brothers and sisters in Ramallah, they are allowing the pressure from the Israelis and some countries like the UK and the Americans and some European countries to deepen this division, because we have heard it, all of us have heard it, either negotiation with Israel or reconciliation talks. You have to choose as the PA in Ramallah, or either Hamas or Israel. Okay, I think they should not allow anyone to put the Palestinian agenda and to decide for us what to do or what not to do. We have to unite ourselves and then to move forward united to tackle our problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, last question. If there is a question, let's end with it. Otherwise, I have to conclude here. Okay, brothers and sisters, thank you very much for joining us. In case you have any suggestions for future talks, please send it to us. Hope to see you next week, inshallah. Thank you, Dr. Basem, and a very warm welcome to all participants. Have a nice iftar. And for those who do not fast, have a nice dinner. Thank you very much.
Thank you for you also, and I hope you can we can receive all of you here live in Gaza.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please, thank you. Bye bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Bye bye. Assalamu alaikum.